Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Call It Anything podcast. I'm Jack, joined by
Mr. Solis.
All right, and we are back here today after some time. Sir, how have you been?
I've been good. I don't know what happened, but February is coming to a close. We're coming up on March, which you recall from your experience as a high school junior means that we're not just on the road to WrestleMania, we're on the road to the cast.
Oh, man. I remember.
Good times, I know.
I remember the preparation for that.
Yeah, but besides that...
I can expect it to be as hectic as ever.
Busy. I don't know about hectic, but certainly busy. And tedious and arduous for the kids. But, we got a big pep rally scheduled for next week. Also, we are on I'm going to wrap up the second month of my commitment to walking every day. You and some folks have been following along on Instagram, and I'm excited to report that's still going.
Nice. That's good to hear. And I think by the time I had mentioned it here, actually, I don't know if I mentioned here. I don't know if I had hit, or I think when we did the Royal Rumble episode, I had just hit 200. And so to keep the viewers up on what I've been doing, and I've actually turned it into like a little mini series on my other channel. But for me, I've been doing my walking a day as usual. But for the next 100 days, I wanted to add challenge to it because, I don't think I ever explained it, but basically from days like 101 to 200, I was just doing what I was usually doing, just listening to different albums. But I was like, it was kind of like hitting that wall in a sense of this is especially once school ended, it was like, well, now that I'm having to go out of my way and all that, and then there was times where new music wasn't dropping on certain days, so I was really struggling to find what to listen to. So for the next 100 days, from day 201 to 300, I set out the challenge for myself to pick an artist and walk their discography. So I would, I'm going in chronological order, and I made it so that I'm not allowed to move on until I've listened to everything. So I started off with J. Cole, who had 9 albums. I recently finished up MGMT, who just came out with their 5th album this past week. So I've been having fun doing that, and I've even turned it, like I said, into a mini-series where I give my thoughts on all those albums as I walk them.
That's super cool. And I've always wanted to do something like that, Jack, especially for a band like Meshuggah. You heard of them?
Mm-mm.
Well, I want to like their music. I don't know where to start. And then I think I just start from the beginning. What did the world hear for the first time when they hit the scene, right? And work through those. Listen to it as the band intended. And so, really excited to hear about that. Nice little shift in the approach to your walks.
Yeah, and I'll definitely say it is definitely a difficult thing at times when you're discovering new artists, because I know a lot of times, I'll find them based off of, a new release, let's say that they just dropped. And so I go to explore their old music and I'm just it's tough to find what hits and what doesn't. So that's why for this, I gave myself the sort of rule of going in chronological order so that I could see the growth from beginning to end.
You remind me of a joke. I know we got a lot of wrestling to talk about, but there's stand-up comedian, what's his, he talks about food all the time. Anyway, he had this joke about, being late to something that the rest of the world has moved past. So he's in the early 2000s going, anyone seen the movie Heat? A movie that came out in the late 80s. He goes, I want to talk about Heat. And everyone's like, you mean that Al Pacino movie from 20 years ago? He goes, yeah, it was good.
And tying it to wrestling, that's how I feel at times when I'll watch something that so many people have been talking about for years, and then I'm so late to it that it just feels like I'm adding nothing to the conversation other than I really like this match.
Hey, that was Jim Gaffigan. I got his name.
Oh, man. But like we said, turning into wrestling, sir, we're obviously here because this past weekend it was Elimination Chamber in Perth, Australia. And I don't think either of us were awake for it, were we?
No, sir. I woke up late in the morning and watched the replay, but I watched it as soon as I could to avoid any spoilers.
Yeah, funny enough, the Castillo family was out doing a little bit of Pokemon hunting because there was a event on Pokemon Go, and so we were even later to that party as we had to wait till we got back in the afternoon, and we were trying. I was able to avoid all spoilers. My dad got spoiled on the opening match, but I was able to avoid all spoilers, and I was glad to have caught the replay so that I could skip forward through any commercials or any little bits that I didn't necessarily feel like watching.
Nice.
But, not to spoil too much, but sir, going into this, what were your expectations with this event? What were you thinking as you saw it?
I thought that I don't think there were any outcomes that were a big surprise, and I think we all went in kind of expecting the winners to win, right? Yeah. I guess maybe I was maybe just the most excited about how we were going to get there. There's a lot of talent in a lot of these matches, so there was a potential for, I'm always looking out for is anything that will make that top 10 list, at the end of 2024. Here's an event.
Yeah, I definitely felt the same way where the show was very predictable, especially because we're on the road to WrestleMania. A lot of plans are coming into fold. You likely aren't going to deviate too much from those, especially on a pay-per-view like this, despite being, a big show in Australia. But, at the same time, I wasn't going to let its predictability hinder any viewing experience. I still wanted to go in fresh, open mind and be like, let me try and enjoy this as much as I would, normally.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so starting off the night, we had the women's elimination chamber match, and I was excited for this one with a lot of the participants involved.
Agreed. Who was in it?
We had Becky Lynch, Naomi, who's now back with WWE after the Rumble, Tiffany Stratton, who essentially has been called up from NXT, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, and Raquel Rodriguez.
Yeah. So, I feel like a lot of recent WWE events and publicity sort of steered our attention to one, maybe two possibilities. But I'll tell you what, Tiffany Stratton, at the Rumble, I don't watch a lot. I haven't seen a lot of her matches, but I seen her at the Rumble going, oh, I missed something special at NXT, right? And so I'm really excited to see what she's going to do. Need to see Naomi and Liv Morgan, since her return from the Rumble. I forget what her score is on WWE 2K24, but she's walking around as if she's living up to that score. It's in the low 90s. And you're like, look at this. Look at her. Check her out. She's side by side with Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair as far as her fortitude and in-ring prowess.
Yeah, and I will say though, the outcome kind of seemed a bit obvious at times. It was you still could look at the, different opponents in this match and, at least for about 3 or 4 of them, you could make the case that, they could come out with the win and come up with an interesting story out of it. I don't think anyone really was expecting Bianca to win this match, but if she had won, people would have been like, oh, well, they're going with, the big, sort of match between her and Rhea for the first time on the main roster, I believe. I don't think they...
Yeah, it's a match that you just realized hasn't happened on the main roster. And it only happened twice in NXT. The commentary also remind us that Liv Morgan is technically the last person to pin Rhea over a year ago. You're like, that's quite the fact to drop on folk.
Yeah, definitely. But going into this match, sir, any spots that stood out for you? Any story points that stood out to you?
Tiffany Stratton, just her, it's not just that she does an Alabama Slammer, which is incredible, but she loads the person up with a cartwheel. I'm like, what happened? I need to replay that. It's so cool.
Yeah, and another thing I saw people complimenting that I have to agree with, that spot that she does where, her opponent's in the corner and she does the different flips and then elbows them as she goes back
Yes.
into them. You know, a lot of people were praising her, saying that, you know, like when she does it, there's a lot more impact behind it. You know,
I
compared to a lot
agree.
of different times that you see other
It
people
makes me
use
think
it.
about all the other times we've ever seen that move and wondered what was the point. Like
Yeah.
she's jumping at them from further away, so it's like a standing elbow.
Yeah. So I definitely enjoyed her different spots. She definitely got a lot of time to shine in this one. I was a bit surprised with Naomi's elimination.
You know, I recall Naomi being eliminated really mostly after a big move that she took. Like it was one of those kind of moves that takes more out of her, right?
Yeah.
Because what did she do? Leap from the top of the pod?
She might have done a sunset flip. I can't remember what it was,
Yes.
but she does do something. And then I thought like this may obviously be due to, you know, Stratton being obviously a bit new, but like there was a bit like too much time in my opinion between the move and when, you know, they finally get the pin on her, you know. So that was one thing I caught, but at the same time, like I was telling my dad, I was like, I don't know, it seemed a bit off, and it definitely was shocking though. But you know, it could start a potential feud for the two of them, you know, especially to give someone right out the gate for Tiffany to feud with.
Agreed. A quick spot by Naomi, you know, before she was eliminated. She's on the cage. She falls from like the height she had climbed into a split
Oh yeah,
on
I
top
remember
of
that
somebody.
one. I remember
What
that
spot
one.
stood out to you, sir?
I'm trying to remember. I think I'm trying to remember. There was a spot with Bianca. I want to say like it was her like avoiding a move, but I completely forget what it was. I know there was also the spot with going back to Tiffany Stratton. She hit that swanton onto Bianca, Becky, and Raquel.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Oh, there was Belair hitting Raquel with the KOD, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Uh-huh.
I really liked that one. And then
Yeah.
I like the way the sort of final three sequence played out between Bianca, Becky, and Liv. Sort of playing up that like any of these three could win.
Yeah, these were the biggest heavy hitters. Raquel Rodriguez also had, I think, a good showing, you know. She was doing a lot of like the big person moves that you just sort of wish she did more of, you know?
Yeah.
Just tossing fools around and knocking people into that cage.
Yeah. I know a lot of people recently have been feeling the same way with Wardlow over in AEW, where a lot of people just want him to cut some of the theatrics that he does. And, you know, it's not necessarily wanting, you know, these people to play into certain cliches, but it's like if it works, you got to go with it, you know? Like
Meat Madness maybe is overcorrecting.
Oh, man. I will say, the finish of this match definitely caught me off guard with how quickly it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I think that's done to protect certain people, right?
Yeah. You know, you see Becky sneak up on Liv to get the manhandle slam, and I was very caught off guard, but I was like, wow, that was super quick, because we had just seen Bianca get eliminated.
Yeah, Liv slips out of the KOD. Becky sneaks in the pin. That went real fast. And then you're right. Then we got a manhandle slam to end the whole thing for the man Becky Lynch, who's gonna go challenge Rhea.
Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting one. Definitely makes me wonder, you know, if like what I'm wondering what are the plans. Like my dad asked me, and I told him personally, I don't know if I see Rhea losing that match, you know, but at the same time, who knows?
I also would put my money on Rhea.
Yeah,
I think Rhea holds on for a little longer. And she like makes just builds up her equity beating somebody like Becky on the biggest stage of them all.
yeah. And sir, real
Hey.
quickly. Oh,
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask you this, because I've seen this turn into discussion on social media, and I
Tell me.
personally am blown away with some of the opinions I've seen. So people brought up apparently I think it was either Rhea or Becky. One of them brought up the prospect of wanting to main event night one to close night one with their match, and someone brought up oh, it should be the women or the woman who won the Royal Rumble, meaning Bayley should challenge Io and they should close night one. Obviously, this is excluding if any theatrics with Roman, The Rock, Cody, and Seth happen on night one. If that
Correct.
spot's open, people were like, one was arguing it should be the other women's title match. And that's when I saw someone say that Bayley and Io aren't a draw for night one, that Rhea and Becky would be the bigger draw. And then someone brought up the point that Rhea and Becky should main event night one because they were mentioning that it should be the story. And that's when someone said, well, if you're bringing up story into this, Bayley and Io have one of the hottest stories that's been building for months. And so it just sparked this whole argument of people coming up with different various reasons. And so I want to ask you, if a women's title match was the main event night one, which of the two do you think it would be?
I will answer that question by asking you another, Jack. Would you classify the story about Bayley and Damage Control as a hot story?
I would say potentially, It's all about, see, the difficult part is it's going to be about these coming weeks, because when Bayley's Rumble win happened, it was a very hot story. But then, they had the segment where Bayley chose. And if you ask both Ricardo and I, we both believe they kind of fumbled that because of the fact that it felt very rushed. Like, I don't know if you caught that segment as well, sir, but it was like they had her, they did the whole thing of Bayley like spying on them in the back. They had Bayley doing the reveal. They had Damage Control turning on her, and then they had Bayley coming out on top, all in the same segment, all within the same hour of the show on SmackDown. And Ricardo and I were both like, that felt like it could have been spread across from the week after Rumble till Mania and made this a much more compelling story. Now Rhea and Becky, on the other hand, all they've really had is face-offs. They haven't really done much story yet. So that's why I say Bayley and Io potentially have a bit more to me, just because there's more to work with there as of right now. But after that first week after Rumble where they did that segment with Bayley and Io, I was like, I don't know if they are going to handle this the way we all wanted to, and if it will end up culminating in a Mania Night 1 event.
I agree, sir. I think that in the next couple of weeks, we could build a story that could end Night 1 between Bayley and Io. I agree. They moved real fast. I think the quickness at which they moved in her choosing Io, I think played into this Elimination Chamber. They needed a very clear expectation that this winner was going to challenge Rhea, right? Otherwise, you would have two number one contenders. And I wish we would have given Bayley more time to tease which one is she going to challenge, right?
Yeah.
I think too that the story that they're telling with Damage Control is kind of been complicated by Dakota Kai's role, right? Yeah. Whose side is she on? And it's not made for compelling TV. It's just it's not. I don't think I'd call it a hot story as much as it is a very long story that we're going to wrap up, right?
Yeah.
But you know what I think about? I think about Sasha and Bianca. Remember that garbage story that they told all the way up to Mania?
Yeah.
And you know what? They made a main event happen out of it with some fantastic editing and just some two class act wrestlers. So we could do it again.
Yeah, definitely feel that same way where it's like there's a lot of time, till Mania. So, who knows what they build from here.
I think the Damage Control need to just be even meaner. You know what I mean? I think we just got to start beating up. I think we're being too subtle still. Just beat them up, break her neck. Hey, one thing that I wanted to shout out for you, Jack. You know what's one thing I didn't see in this Women's Elimination Chamber that made me enjoy it 100,000 times more?
Huh.
I realized, and it was consistent throughout the whole match, no one, Jack, none of the 6 participants tried to break up a pin.
Wow, I didn't even catch that.
I did, because when someone went for a pin, I went looking for it. I'm like, here you go. We're going to throw away logic. No, sir. Everybody's pin was honored and kicked out of. Nobody ruined the stipulation and spirit of the match. Nobody's friends with anybody.
Man, that's actually a really cool feature. I didn't even notice that, but that's really cool. Spoiler alert. If you think LA Knight was robbed, give me a yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, I just wanted to propose that question because I saw so many people talking about it, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's an interesting discussion.
For this story to have been handled better, but I'm telling you off the record, right, that I watched the first episode of SmackDown in a minute, right?
Yeah.
And it was like the third tier story that was being told throughout the night.
Yeah. Definitely think they kind of messed up from the start, but again, there's a lot of time till Mania, so hopefully we'll see. And again, like I said, this whole discussion could be pointless if some type of shenanigans between The Rock, Roman, Seth, and Cody happens on night 1 as well, Like, we could have this discussion, but if they want to do some type of tag match or some type of, segment, we all know that's probably closing night 1.
You know what would make Bayley main event ready? If Sasha came and guest refereed.
Oh man, I saw someone bring that up too. They were like, "Oh, if Sasha was coming back, it would be main event worthy." And I was like, "That's an interesting take."
But it is. Hey, before we move away from the women, did you see or hear about the kickoff show match? It was the women's tag team champions, the Kabuki Warriors, up against Australia's own Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae.
My dad told me about this. I think it was the day after. Where he was like, "Oh, did you know this match happened on the pre-show?" And I was like, "I did not even know that occurred."
And it was good. It was, it was really good because that crowd was they wanted to see Indy in the ring. They were chanting her name. The Kabuki Warriors, they did the great tease the tag. They were beating up Candice to no end, and the Kabuki Warriors won.
Nice.
Impressively, without any mist. They were just real mean, and they hit real hard.
So what you're saying is everything they did in this match, they need to start doing to Bayley as we build towards
Let's go. Just remember the club and beating up John Cena? Just beat up Bayley. Just every week, just beat up Bayley.
Yeah, and maybe EO can come out with a shirt like that since they wouldn't let AJ in the club have one that said beat up John Cena. Let them come out with a beat up Bayley shirt.
Beat up Bayley shirt. And then you got men wearing beat up Bayley shirts.
Oh, man. But moving on to, I guess with knowing that, our second title match of the night, and it's a tag title match. We have the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship match. Finn Balor and Damian Priest of the Judgment Day defending their titles against the now Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate.
Do you remember what their team name was called?
Was it British Strong Style?
It's the New Catch Republic.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, I was surprised too that they didn't call themselves British Strong Style, an established name that I guess maybe more so described Tyler Bate and Trent Seven.
Yeah, I think maybe that's why, since Seven's not there. But
Jack, we saw shots of the sunset in Australia behind the arena, and the shot of the sunset, which was a beautiful, with the Judgment Day druids, in the sky. It was one of the coolest visuals ever.
Yeah, I thought that looked really great. What were your thoughts going into this match, sir? Because as many people have described, they've been, trying to revitalize the tag division for some time now, and now they're adding, a fresh pair like Dunn and Bate into the mix. What were your thoughts going into this?
I desperately want them to split these tag titles up. It's over. It's been a year. And you know what's wild? The revelation that these titles main evented WrestleMania last year in night 1.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah, I really want these to be split up. I think it's just the craziest thing that these guys are still carrying around two sets of belts.
Yeah, and it's like, especially like with the way that the brand split goes nowadays, it's like either commit to it or just make these one belt. It's such a difficult thing because it's like, you kind of have all these different teams that like they feel like they're in that sort of like creative limbo of like, well, we don't really have plans for you, and any plans that might involve the titles, we're busy with Judgment Day right now, and
Yeah, you've got on SmackDown the Street Profits wrestling AOP for nothing. Like that should be for something, but it's for nothing.
Yeah.
You got Alpha Academy, you got Imperium, you got New Day still rocking, and they're fighting over nothing.
Yeah. But what about the actual match, sir? What do you think about it?
For as much as I want things to change, I wasn't interested in Tyler Bate or Pete Dunne winning. I like the Judgment Day a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't really too interested in this match the most. I still obviously tuned in just to, see what it was going to be about. It was pretty decent. It was funny when they did that spot where I don't know if it was like in the arena or just on our screens at home, but like there was a period where like it cut to black. And
did you hear about why?
No, I didn't hear about why.
And it's funny that we're conditioned, right? When it goes black, were you expecting Malachi Black or The Undertaker or The Fiend to pop up?
Yeah, like it was funny because when it happened, my dad was like, "Oh, great! Here comes Big Head talking about JD to come out and interfere."
Oh, how funny! No, Jack, I heard that when Dom was on that side of the ring. I think was he just ejected? I think.
Yeah, he was just getting ejected.
The front row were flipping him off to such a degree because there's so many guys giving him the bird that they censored the screen.
Wow. I didn't even know that. That's hilarious.
There was another point where the sound cut off, and I thought it was my feed. I wondered if, and I think it was because somebody was swearing loud enough for the camera to pick up.
That is hilarious, but not surprising at all for Australia.
Correct.
Oh, man, but yeah, that was one of the main spots that stood out to me just because of my dad's comment where it's like Dom's getting kicked out, the screen goes black, and my dad immediately goes, "Oh, great, here comes Big Head to interfere."
Big Head. That's so funny. For me, I couldn't be more impressed with Pete Dunne. Got his name back, got his groove back, and goodness, the guy was vicious.
Yeah.
And don't you love that, vicious, killer look Pete Dunne paired with goofy, smiling Tyler Bate, everyone's favorite strong boy.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting pairing. I guess we'll see what's more to come out of them, but the closing of this match is Priest hitting the double choke slam, Balor hits the coup de grace, and they get the win. Weirdly enough, Pete Dunne's the one that takes the pin, so again, interested to see where it goes from here.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on from that match, we got a segment in between. I kind of skipped through most of it, but we had a Grayson Waller effect sort of segment with Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes.
Correct.
And that the highlight, of course, was seeing them beat up Austin Theory and Grayson Waller doing nothing about it. So people think something might come from that for the two of those guys. But,
yes,
it was just sort of fueling that whole, continuing the story that they've been building with Rock and Roman.
Yeah, Cody, and you know what I like? It's the little thing, as AJ Styles once said. Grayson Waller, his shtick is, he's young or he's in the know or, he's a trendy guy, right? But when Seth and Cody both sort of allude to having a secret or they're going to make a big reveal, I love Waller reacting to that. His character is he loves a scoop. And so even if Seth is just going to announce that he's going to be medically cleared in a week, just the idea, like, you're going to hear something for the first time. I love Grayson, like, scooting his chair or being really interested, like, yeah, yeah, you know, and I love, like, that's his shtick, you know?
Yeah, very, very talk show host like.
Very. And, like, you know, Cody's like, I've got a scoop for you. And, like, he doesn't, you know, shoot it down or bury it. He's like, what you got? What you going to say? And Cody gets this. Cody goes out there, looks dead into the camera and goes, I won't fight one-on-one with The Rock. And you're like, okay, whatever there, dude.
Oh man, yeah, it's super interesting to see where this story goes. I saw, funny enough, I saw a quote from Cody saying that the bloodline's not hunting him, he's hunting them or something like that. And
yeah,
I saw a bunch of people making memes out of it where they posted, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember his name from New Japan, who was like the Bullet Club hunter, and then they also posted Frankie Kazarian in AEW, who was the Bullet Club hunter, or the Elite hunter, and they were just like, this is what Cody's coming off as right now, saying this.
Hey, you know what would make Bayley a main event, you know, if she was a damage control hunter, if she was just picking them off one by one. Dakota should have turned on her. She would have had more bodies to get to Io. And the whole story is her trying to get her hands on Io.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see. But
do you want to take this moment to talk at some length about what your thoughts are on The Rock's recent everythings?
Yeah, I guess so, because we didn't get really much of a chance to talk about it after Royal Rumble for the most part. And,
no, sir. When we met after the Royal Rumble, we were certain Cody's going to finish his story. No, that hadn't been ruined for 4 days after we talked.
Yeah, I know. I bet the people are dying to hear what I had to say after being, you know, so adamant about Cody Rhodes finishing the story to the point where I was coming off as CM Punk's biggest hater.
Goodness, they didn't even know. They didn't even know.
Yeah,
right after that episode, right on SmackDown, Cody goes, it ain't gonna be me for some reason. And he did that long walk to the back, that sad walk, right? That lit a fire under the entire internet wrestling community.
Yeah, and honestly, I was completely shocked at the reaction that everything was getting, because I wasn't like, I was just so confused by the fact of like everything that happened. Like, we talk about them with the whole Bailey Io thing, you know, not really hitting. I was like, I don't know what was going on in their mind with whatever original plans they may have had, because trust me, I don't believe for a second this was all originally planned, you know, like, right. I don't think any of this was originally planned, because if it was, it's dumb, because what is your explanation, as you said, for Cody just giving up his WrestleMania main event shot? And, you know, and what is the logical explanation behind him saying, I'm going to face you, but not at WrestleMania? Hello, dummy. The Royal Rumble is only for WrestleMania. You've never seen someone win the Rumble and be like, actually, I'll use that shot at the pay-per-view after WrestleMania, or I'll use it at SummerSlam. No one's ever done that. It's like when Austin Theory cashed in on the U.S. title. You were like, no one's ever done that. That doesn't make sense no matter what logic you try and put behind it. That's a dumb decision. But so I was surprised by the fact that the reaction behind it, because again, as I was telling Mr. Solis before this episode, you know, if you remember, I don't remember what episode it was. I don't think it was in the Rumble episode, but it may have been a while back. But he proposed a question to me of who I thought was the GOAT. And, you know, I talked about, in my opinion, you know, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, whoever you want to refer to him as. And I talked about others, and I was telling him off the record before we started, I was like, in the back of my mind ever since then, I've been thinking, how did I forget to mention John Cena? I don't think I mentioned John Cena. And I was telling him, it's very telling of my age and the era I grew up in that I would consider John Cena a GOAT. And so very similarly telling of the era of wrestling I grew up watching. This whole stuff with Cody, to a lesser extent, has reminded me of what we all went through with Daniel Bryan back in 2014, you know, and the rise. Now, it's not completely the same, you know, it's not, I don't know if I would say it is 100% like I don't want to say the word authentic, because like a lot of this is authentic, you know, but it's just like this one is more of the company realizing their mistake rather than, the people forcing their hand like they did with Daniel Bryan. This one is like the company had a plan and they kind of realized, actually, wait, yeah, none of this is making sense, or like we're kind of screwed if we continue with this plan. Like it's one of those things where it's like I can't directly compare it to Daniel Bryan's story because Cody won the Rumble. He got his spot, It wasn't like Daniel Bryan who wasn't even in the Rumble, It's the thing of like, I'm comparing it in the sense of like, I'm surprised that so many people have been willing this change because so many people that like, a lot of the passionate fans that forced that change back when Daniel Bryan happened aren't really there anymore. Like a lot of the fans that were there to force that change, they're not really there anymore. You have a lot more of a casual fan base, but yet that casual fan base is voicing their displeasures and now forcing this change where they're like, hey, we want you to admit you were wrong and put Cody back in that position that he was when he won the Rumble.
So, goodness gracious, I hope everybody's got like a fan or your air conditioning pointed to your listening device that I'm sure is melting from that hot take right now. We need to get the temperature turned down a bit. Jack is heated, but to build on that, Jack. I know after this WrestleMania season, they're gonna make all the documentaries and all the backstage stuff, and they're gonna say all of this was a plan. Absolutely not, Jack. The Rock thought he was gonna come up, show up, and everyone was going to welcome him with open arms. But you know what happened? He posted an Instagram post about his Under Armour gear or whatever, a line. It was just him, Jack, was like, hey, tomorrow we got an announcement about a new line. And literally every comment underneath it was, go away. We're doing something and you're ruining it. And it was incredible, Jack. It was one post about a thing he was going to do the next day about his shoes or about his clothes. They were like, hey, you ruin everything.
Hey man, the strikes ended. The strikes ended.
And
you
that
can go back
Vegas
to
event, Jack. Golly, my favorite parts were Big E, on the panel talking about Cody's got to get this done, and he says, and not at SummerSlam. He does it at WrestleMania, and that was incredible to hear somebody say.
Yeah, and it's like, it's just one of those things. Like I was telling my dad when it was first happening, I was just like, I'm not upset at The Rock being here, it's just you have something that's been in place, and I get it, there's no guarantee that The Rock is going to be here, especially healthy for a Roman match at any point, but at the same time, the same could have been said for any of the past years in Dallas, in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, WrestleMania Hollywood. It's right there, perfectly built. And each time he told you no. So why should we bow down to his hand now when he wants it to happen? When it's like, no, your time was there. We have something that we've been building for 2 years now at this point. Really 3, ever since Cody first showed up back in the WWE. It's like,
no. We're waiting for stars to align, right? And I love people online dragging him, right? Talking about, hey, he tried to push his way into the DC universe and it didn't work. He tried to revolutionize football and it didn't work. And he's just had a few fumbles, right? Where, after the dust settles and he's looking for, I guess, his next big venture, it reminds me of that scene in Avengers Endgame where Thanos is like, and what did that all bring you? Back to me, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because then you have that whole press conference thing happen where they get mad at Cody for bringing up their family, and everyone's like, oh, but you guys can drag Dusty's name through the mud and all that. And then he mentioned something about, I'd smack the taste out of Seth Rollins' mouth. And the funniest thing I saw was someone just going and being like, Seth, I will give you this amount of money if you go in The Rock's face and mention Black Adam flopping.
And so that takes us to Friday Night SmackDown 2 weeks ago, where, I was saying about Bayley. We won't keep beating up Bayley. Things are being too muddy or unclear. We got to hit her hard, right? The Rock came out and hit everybody hard. He came out with that shirt. He came out and talked about who has what STD on their face. He went out there into Utah. making fun of their lifestyles. Remember? Did you see it?
Yeah.
And he didn't. There was nothing unclear about his motivation. He said, "Cody, I'm gonna make sure you leave WrestleMania the same way you walk in, and that's a big old loser."
Yeah, and talking about big old losers, how much of a big loser does Roman look like following The Rock around like he's a dog?
He's the big dog, right? He's just got. And what's crazy? Last year, when we were like, Cody's going to finish the story, he couldn't beat the Bloodline Jack. It was Roman with 2 Usos and a solo. This year, he's got Roman, 1 Uso, a solo, and The Rock. We traded Jay for The Rock. Like, literally, for all intents and purposes, mathematically, how's he going to do this? Well, I guess he needs Seth. He needs a shield.
Well, you brought up the Avengers. It's like last year was Infinity War with Cody losing to the big bad. It's going to be Endgame this year where you're going to have everyone making an appearance to take down the Bloodline at this point.
I want everybody. I want Daniel Bryan. I want Edge. I want Cesaro. Like, they were talking about all the people that Roman's beaten, right? But how many of them are even still here, Jack?
Yeah. Like, no lie. It's like
Braun comes back.
You can bring out KO, Sammy, Jay, Seth.
Logan Paul. Yeah. He needs to be avenged.
Yeah, and it's funny because someone was saying, man, talking about like looking like a loser. People were saying, like Rollins has really come off as a loser in this build because he comes off as such a secondary champion, all that. But people were like, Seth, just mention that Roman never beat you. He got DQ'd. He's never beaten you. Just bring it up. Why are you like coming off as this? And like again, it goes back to that thing of like the company just they've been kind of being weird with this build because it's like, man, you're really not making Rollins look any better with this involvement in this feud, and all this. And it's just like, it's been so confusing. And that's why I say it seems much more like they're trying to work their way through this ever since the initial fumble. And that's why, like you said, whenever they come out with that documentary, I'm not going to be fooled. This was not the original plan. You have been trying to figure out where to go from. Like, I'm convinced this is like back in the days where Vince McMahon was ripping up scripts before the show. Like, I have no clue what they've been doing with this build, but it's made for interesting and compelling television because it's gotten a lot of people talking about it. It's gotten a lot of my friends who don't even watch wrestling talking about it.
Jack, how many minutes we got this episode?
That looks like about 2 and 30 seconds.
All right, we got to wrap it up, and we have 2 more matches to talk about from old Perth, Australia.
Yeah, definitely got a lot more to talk about. Funny enough, I was telling Mr. Solis, my dad thought this was going to be a short one given the number of matches, but Mr. Solis and I finding a way to give you guys an extra episode now. Woohoo! And just real quickly, before we close this episode out, if you think I'm coming off a lot more negative or hateful, I just want to say earlier today, I saw Fightful report that they're going to be adding a Hater of the Year award, so I'm trying to go for that,
Let's go! Jack for Hater of the Year.
I gotta get it. After coming at CM Punk at the Rumble, and now I'm coming at The Rock and Roman. I've been coming at Roman ever since he started this reign. You can go back through this channel. We were making these videos back then. You can see it from day one. I've been on Roman not having that title.
That's right.
But thank y'all for joining for this one. Tune into part 2.